I call the meeting to order. City of University Heights, Iowa City Council meeting. Today is August 10th, 2021, and the meeting is being conducted electronically due to COVID-19 pandemic. The council is all present. Thanks everyone for attending. The first order of business is approval of minutes, July 13th, 2021, and they were sent by Mike in his report. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. Public input. We have a few members of the public here. Would anyone like to speak to the council? You have 5 minutes or less. Oh dear, I should stop my cuckoo clock. You could probably hear it. Okay, I'll move to mayor's report. And the first thing is ARPA. Oh, there's somebody who's got their volume on and we can hear shuffling around. I'm just gonna say that. Anyway, my first item is ARPA. And ARPA is American Rescue Plan Act. And as you know, it's a state and local fiscal recovery plan to help governments respond to COVID. Johnson County, it's all based on population, and I'm going to give you some examples. Johnson County is going to receive just under 30 million, Iowa City 3.3 million, Tiffin is a little over 600,000, University Heights is 140,000, and Hills is 119,000. And Johnson County has staff available to all the cities in Johnson County to navigate through the process. And we held a meeting the city with councilors Nick and Bobby and Chief Troy and myself, with the 3 people from the county, Donna Brooks, Ray Forsythe, and Allison Wells, a couple of weeks ago, to kind of start the navigation through it. And Mike Haverkamp has us registered with the state to receive funding. And so the first part of it, I'm just gonna say this briefly. The first part is public input. And Mike has a chart that they sent, but it's gonna go on the city website anyway to show public input. They had put up about 7 meeting places for any of the public to go to help every city in the county. They have some urban, specifically urban, and they have specifically Iowa City. We're urban, you know, we're members of the Urban Area Policy Board. And then they have rural times, but anybody can come to any of them. And so the meeting specifically where it fits University Heights more, the urban cities, is next Monday from 6 to 7:30 at the Robert Lee Rec Center. And the first 2 meetings, they're not going to do Zoom, but they're going to require you wear a mask and social distance if you attend. But in September, all the rest of the meetings they'll have a Zoom connection. And Johnson County also has established a web page, and that'll be on our city website. And they also have a direct link to public input survey there. And you can, and it's public input to suggest what the city should use the funds for. So Lisa will put that all on the website. I might have the county staff come to a meeting. We'll have to see how it goes and answer any questions or whatever. Are there any questions for me or Bobby or Nick, or did you 2 want to say anything?
Louise, I would just say that it's tempting. I don't remember exactly how she described the drop down for the city, but it's tempting for people in University Heights to do Iowa City. And I think we talked about making a special effort to do the drop down to University Heights. I don't know, Louise, if you or Bobby, if you recall, or Troy, if you
Yeah.
recall
No,
how
that was,
they described that exactly, but I thought that seemed like relevant information for us.
yeah, they're the link that people can go to give feedback. They track that by location, and what Nick's saying is many
Mhm.
people just don't think to put Iowa City, and even sometimes websites, autofill to Iowa City if you put in the zip code or whatever, but make sure you select University Heights for anyone who fills that
Yeah,
out.
because it's zip code and city. And they're exactly right to say that. Make sure you list yourself as University Heights and not your Iowa City address. Right, very good. Thank you for saying that. So with that, we'll go on to the next item, and that is consideration of continuing Zoom meetings. And I contacted Sam Jarvis last week. He's the acting director of the Johnson County Public Health Department. And they were just starting to send things out to cities at that time. Anyway, it was kind of perfect timing because of the uptick with Delta variant cases in Johnson County. And he would recommend physical distancing and wearing of masks for in-person meetings, regardless of vaccination status. And so with that, I would recommend that we continue Zoom meetings because we would have to have 10 tables and they'd have to be spread apart. And for sure, I don't think we could film it very easily. We'd have to do a sound thing or something, but I would recommend to council based on that. And other cities are, when they have a big auditorium, they have been spacing out more. And so what does council want to do? Oh, you put out the, we're recommending CDC guidelines. I had sent this to Mike to put some of this in there. This is what's been going out to the cities. And then he specifically responded to my question saying he'd recommend physical distancing and wearing of masks for in-person meetings, regardless of vaccination status. Does council agree that we could continue on Zoom?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
I agree.
Same.
Okay, that's 4 people. Okay, very good. Okay. I thought we could get to that point, but we'll look at it month by month, maybe. I sure hope it goes better. So we'll go on to hotel update. And I didn't hear back from Greg Steltner or Jim Glasgow, so I don't think there's a hotel update today. And you'll let me know, Mike, if they happen to come on, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll go down to legal report. And Steve, you sent a very long legal report. And did you have other things than that, or does anybody have any questions for Steve? Steve, I'll let you say a word or two if you want.
I'm good.
You're good. Okay, thank you. So we'll go on to city clerk report. And Mike, you sent your written report and also Brian's report.
Right.
And you were talking about the municipal election information in your report.
Right. Municipal elections will be held on November 2nd. This will be the first year that the municipal election is combined with the school election. That was a legislative change a couple years ago. So there will be more things on the ballot than just our University Heights offices. Because we all have 2-year terms on council and mayor, every seat is up for election this year. The county auditor is the filing officer for the election. Candidates may file their T2 papers at the auditor's office, 913 South Dubuque Street, anytime now, starting yesterday, and concluding at 5 p.m. on Thursday, August 26th. So to get a nomination form, a nomination packet, you need to contact the auditor's office. They're the ones that provide those. University Heights, all offices require at least 10 signatures on a nomination petition. The auditor's office suggests getting 10% over whatever the required number is, so they would suggest you get 11. And that has to be filed with the auditor. University Heights and Iowa City are a little different than other cities. If we have more than 10 candidates, if 11 or more candidates file for council and 3 or more candidates file for mayor, we have to have a primary. So that would be on October, I think I put that in there, October
5th, I think.
Yes, October 5th. So those are the deadlines, and that's all of those deadlines for filing are whether a person is an incumbent or anyone is running as a new candidate. So that's kind of what I have to share for council as well as the general public.
Thank you. Any questions for Mike? Anything else to report, Mike, that you wanted to? No.
I also made a couple of references to our rental permit renewal. Our process seems to be running really smoothly. We had another 7 people complete the process today. So I talked with Brian Jensen a little bit, and we're both pleased with how it's been going. So I don't think we'll have very many. I was going to send a follow-up at the end of this week to remind people that they have 2 more weeks before potential late penalties would be enforced. So, but I don't think we're going to have very many people in that case at all. So.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike? Okay, we'll go down to city treasurer's report and payment of the bills. Lori circulated the list of bills, and are there any other additions to those? Does anybody have any additions? Is there any objection to paying the bills? Hearing none, the bills will be paid by unanimous consent. Now, Bobby, did you want to talk a little bit here rather than at the finance report, just touch base a little? Thank you.
Yep, that's just fine. So I don't know if it's a situation or whatever, but we ran into a little bit of a hiccup. With cash flow for the city, basically in fiscal year 21, we had put in place to do some bonding for the capital improvements projects that we did on Golfview and whatever. Ended up not doing the bonding. So all that to say, we need to go back and do that so that we have adequate funding. We've been in contact with the Spear Financial, I believe is the name of the bonding or the financial advisor, I guess, out of, I don't know where they're out of, but, and then also talking to a couple local banks to see if maybe making just a short-term, almost like a line of credit, like just a commercial loan type of a thing would be a better option, because you will pay the bonding people a bit of money to do that, which is not bad. They're valuable, but just something that we're looking at, I guess, right now. And so the plan is, I guess, to go back and bond to get, I guess, to get back some of the funds that we use for those capital improvements projects. And then, you know, in I think as short term as possible to repay those. And which in that case, that's why just doing a private like line of credit or commercial loan makes more sense with a bank here, Hills or Green State or Midwest One makes more sense than doing the actual whole bonding process. So that's where we're at with that. We'll hopefully have more information on that at the next meeting.
Week.
week.
next
yeah.
week or so.
We'll probably have to have a special meeting, is my guess, at some point to approve it, because I think anytime the city does any sort of bonding or financing or whatever it is, there has to be I don't know, whatever you call that, a special meeting or a approval or public input, all that. So we want to do that. Want to make sure we get that in.
Okay, thanks for working on that, Bobby. Are there any questions for Bobby or any of us? Okay. Then we go down to police report and committee report. Chief, you submitted a police report.
Just a couple quick things on that, if I may, Mayor.
Sure.
On my staffing issues, and I sent this out, but I just want to make sure it's for anybody that didn't see my correction in the public. Under part-time officers, Officer Cox is not the one that resigned, but following Officer Cox's injury, another part-time officer, Nick Sherman, resigned. And we had a good talk, and it came down to really security issues. He was concerned about potentially an injury at his part-time job affecting his full-time job status. And then good news on Officer Cox, he was cleared to return to duty on August 12th. I spoke with him. He fully intends to continue to work for us in a part-time status and to help us out as soon as he's able moving into football season. Special shout out again to my officers and to council and city for not just their support, allowing me to attend RAGBRAI, but also in dealing with some of the personal health issues that my mother's going through. So I just want to make sure you all know that I appreciate your support and understanding. And that's all I have, unless anybody has questions.
We all hope your mother's doing well.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Any questions for Chief? We'll get into football a little more when we go down to the e-government report. So we'll go to engineer report. And Sarah, did you have anything to add? I'm sorry.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I will say I do want to thank Troy, because I know he's been balancing a lot recently, and thank you to Troy and the department for keeping things running smoothly while a lot of us are out of town.
Thank you. Then we'll go to engineer report and committee report. Josiah, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just go through my report here. So that my first item is discussion about fiber to the home project that I'm on Communications is doing. As I wrote in my report, they're doing a project right now in Iowa City in 2021 and 2022 to provide fiber optic for residential use in Iowa City. They contacted the mayor initially and asked how they should handle that with University Heights. And if University Heights would like to be included in that project and in their build out in 2022. So I did contact them and talked to one of their employees a little bit to find out what that would include and what that would look like in University Heights. And I'll hit on a couple bullet points here. So as described, their project would provide a dedicated fiber option to residents for internet and phone service. And then they provide several internet and phone packages, different levels, different speeds, depending on what you would want. They said that University Heights, approximately 400 households, give or take, would be served by one cabinet hub. So basically it's a neighborhood for them, a neighborhood build out. And I attached a map that we received from them after I discussed this with them, with a sort of preliminary, not preliminary is the right word. They looked at like how they might serve a network to serve all the properties in University Heights. So it's a combination of new underground services and running overhead lines on existing utility poles. So yeah, that's the map right there. So the red lines represent schematically like new underground conduit lines. And the blue lines would be new lines running overhead on existing utility poles. And most of those are like in the backyards between properties and streets. Go ahead.
Is the cabinet the star, or where will the cabinet be located?
Yeah, so that star represents the cabinet location.
Okay.
And the guy I talked to said, that's not set in stone. I mean, that's negotiable to try and figure out where the best place is for that cabinet. I think they're just sort of representing it in the middle of the city, more or less. So that's one cabinet. The cabinet that serves the area is supposedly the size of a large mailbox. The other points would be, and you've probably seen this in some houses, there'd be a pedestal, like an above grade green pedestal box. It's usually like 12 inches by 12 inches square and about 2 feet high. So in order to serve houses in the front, they'd have to have a pedestal box along the property line of each 2 houses. So each 2 houses would share one of those service boxes. And then he said for the lines that come in from behind the properties, and these would be most of the overhead lines, those lines would drop down and there's a box in the backyard. Typically 4 properties can share a service box in the backyard. So he said this build out for the overhead takes 2 to 4 weeks, and the new underground lines are about double that. So 4 to 8 weeks of construction work. And then once, if they get the go ahead to do this in University Heights, he said they will start notifying residents a few months in advance. He said they use direct mail, emails, going door to door, things like that, to let residents know what's going on and that the services would be available, like what the timing would be. And then of course, whether or not a resident decides to use them for their service is up to them. They can sign up or not. And if they do sign up in advance, he said, if they have orders, when the guys show up to put in the network, they'll make the connection to the house at that time as well. I did include the website for IMON, so you can go there and check out everything they have listed and what their different packages are. So if the bottom line is, if the city would like to engage IMON for this project, they would need some confirmation from University Heights by the end of the year, December of this year. If they want to be included in the project, and that'll give them time to plan out their routing and materials and get that build in 2022. Now, he did say that they could have representatives available to attend a city meeting, explain things, answer questions like that. So I know we've done that in the past, so that may be a good step here as well if you want to move forward.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean,
any questions on?
I don't have any questions other than, I'm just conscious anytime there's a utility box or whatever, but it looks like, I know that's just a placeholder now, but we'd want to know where they're going to put that and everything. I love the idea of having another option. So.
Yeah,
Do
me
you
too.
know, Josiah, where the server is fed from? Do they rent Mediacom fiber? Because I know for a fact US Cellular, when they go down, it's because they lost Mediacom fiber. Somebody cut through it, which you would think a cellular wouldn't need fiber, but it actually is fed from Cedar Rapids via fiber to Iowa City for US Cellular. So when somebody cuts a fiber, US Cellular goes down as well. And I'm wondering, are these interconnected as well? Or is IMON just renting cable bandwidth off of Mediacom? Do you know that answer, or probably not? Or
I don't. We could certainly find out,
okay.
But I do not know.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
excited about the prospect of having fiber optic internet. So I definitely don't see a reason at this point not to do it. But yeah,
Yes.
maybe it'd be interesting if they could come to a meeting and if we had questions for them. I'm also
Doug-
curious, like it says residential, but would that include like our businesses or Horn School? Like, could they take advantage of that? Do we know?
I think they could. You know, it was represented as residential to me when we talked, but I do know if you go to their website and you look at services in the Iowa City area, it talks about residential and business services.
Hey, Doug, was your question about whether I'm on, you know, like borrowed or rented or whatever bandwidth from Mediacom?
Yeah. A lot of times telecommunications rent like tower time. You know, I used to work on cell phone towers for US Cellular and Verizon, and they would have like these smaller companies that would rent bandwidth on their towers. But even though it belonged to somebody else, they would just basically rent, you know, their tower or their fiber optics or whatever they had. And I know US Cellular is renting fiber transmission of data from Cedar Rapids now.
I'm pretty sure that with IMON, in terms of like cable, the cable that would come from a pole or whatever to somebody's home, I think they're running their own cable. In terms
Right.
of renting the pole or something, I really can't speak to that.
Well, the main hub, I think I'm on, if I remember right, aren't they in Hiawatha? I think they're
Something like that.
Yeah, I think they're in Hiawatha, but like I can get into the technical side of it, but I know the main hub for US Cellular and Mediacom is in Cedar Rapids off of, was that 6th Avenue? I think that's where that's at, but I know a lot of that fiber is piped down this way and then it's distributed and they can call it, you know, I'm on or Verizon or whoever.
I see. Regarding Sarah's question, I know my office, you know, which is not maybe the same, but we're using IMON, so I know they have commercial applications, and it's so fast it'll make your head spin.
What did you have before?
We had whatever the current incarnation of like Ma Bell was, you know,
Oh.
Quest, and then I think it's CenturyLink. And I'm not an expert on any of these things. I just know it used to be kind of pokey sometimes. That, you know, I think we'd be lucky to be getting 50, 75 megabits per second, I think is the standard measure. We get like 500 megabits per second. I didn't even know it went that high. Our upload speed is like 370 or something. It's nuts in a good way.
I'm hearing enough interest from council. I think we ought to set something up with IMON for September, October for them to come to a meeting. Does that sound like?
Sounds great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and hear what they say. Yeah.
Well, that sounds
So-
good. So yeah,
Mhm.
if you guys are in favor, I was gonna maybe get in touch with you, Mayor, and Doug as Streets Chair, and probably use Steve as a reference, just to sort of draft a schedule of what needs to happen in order for the council to be in a position to address it one way or the other by the end of the year.
Very good. Very good. Proceed like that.
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let's see, Josiah, you had other things, yes.
Yeah, Golfview Avenue. So that was included in your pay app. At this point, we're basically just down to the retainage amount that we hold on the contractor. They're working on their punch list. They've got a bunch of it done. Their final completion date is August 15th. But I did note that the sodding has a 30-day maintenance period that they need to take care of that, and that runs through August 21st. So the landscaping contractor is responsible during that maintenance period for watering, weeding, and mowing of the sod out there until that date. And then on August 21st, we'll actually inspect it again and determine if it's acceptable or not, or if there's areas that they need to redo. But with that, we anticipate at the September meeting, that's when we would have a resolution ready for the council to accept the project as complete and release the retainage to the contractor and close out the project.
And what is that amount? Is that the 18, what is that amount?
The amount of the pay app this month was
Right.
$18,620.52. The retainage on the project is, I think, around $8,000 now.
And Paul Moore is going to contribute to that project, and
Correct. Yep.
when would be appropriate for him? Couldn't he pay?
I think that agreement with Paul is written so that once the city accepts the project as complete, we
Okay.
then send Paul an invoice and he has 30 days to remit.
I see. So that'd be September 14th would be what, okay. Thank you. That sure looks nice. I went over there. It's really nice and the landscaping's beautiful. Oh, it's a
Yep.
beautiful street. Just a beautiful street. I'm jealous. So pretty. Just really nice there.
Well, that's good to hear.
You're doing a good job, Josiah. You
And,
and your assistant,
Yeah.
the guy in
Yeah.
the red truck.
Yep. And I'm still coordinating with Paul on things. So a couple miscellaneous items. Iowa City Wastewater rebuilt 2 sanitary sewer manhole lids on Oakcrest last month. Those were having issues with the lids coming loose, and Troy was having to deal with that a number of times. And then eventually they were like, well, we're just going to go out there and get it done. So that was appreciated.
Yes.
Work is underway for repainting of pavement markings on city streets. And we have drawings out for quotes for removal and replacement of a couple sections of damaged panels on local streets over on the west side of town for this fall. And a follow-up to an item that had been out there for a while, the damaged sanitary sewer service on Lemur Court was repaired, and they've now replaced the roadway as well.
Saw that.
Are there any questions?
You've been very busy, Josiah. Thank you for your good work. Any questions for Josiah and Doug? Do you have anything you'd like to report or say?
No, I'm just still walking around University Heights. I still got a few folks that are having difficulty getting their tree branches out of walkways on sidewalks. And I've also got a couple things address with some branches on Melrose, I believe, too. So just moving forward with that, I think I probably have a new wastewater decal I need to put on that new stormwater intake manifold down there on Golfview. So I'll probably get to that this next weekend after my wedding's over.
His daughter's wedding.
Yeah. I'm done.
Father of the bride. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Any questions for Josiah or Doug?
Not a question, but Doug, there are some wastewater stickers here in the city office too.
Oh, there's more. Okay.
If you need any more.
Yeah, I've got a small pile left, so if I need more, that's good to know. Thank you for letting me know that. I'll come up and grab them if needed.
I'll just put them in your mailbox.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go down to, we've already done Bobby Scott's finance report. You don't have anything to add, Bobby, do you?
Sorry, no, that's correct. That's about it.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go to building, zoning, and sanitation. And you know what? Did they leave your name off there, Nick? Sorry about that. Nick Herbal, Chair.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thanks for your report. We also now have e-government and Lisa.
Well, saw my written report. I did just want to say that Mayor Fromm did a really nice job with her remarks at the grand opening of the courtyard, University Heights, as I like to call it. I know she does a good job representing the city, but we don't often get to see it. So thank you, Mayor. And the football letter was attached to my report. I didn't hear anything from anybody. Does anybody have anything to say, or do you want more time to look it over? Or did you think it was fabulous?
Thank you for editing that and getting it. It'll get on the website tomorrow
If nobody has any comment, yes.
if nobody has any comments.
Yeah, Lisa, I appreciate that. I think it looks good, kind of a good combination of communicating that there's some concerns that have been voiced, but not necessarily, being too aggressive. So I thought it was a good balance.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Lisa? Thank you, Lisa. And we'll also talk tomorrow about getting all of the American Rescue Plan on the website. Thank you. Okay, other business. Now we have consideration of resolution 2131, affirming the city's commitment to being a welcoming community. And I don't know if council wants to put a motion on the table and then discussion, or I know that Nick and Lisa have worked on this during the past month and circulated it. And what's your pleasure, Nick and Lisa?
I move for passage of resolution 2131.
And I'll second.
Motion by Nick and second by Lisa. Discussion.
I would just say I appreciate the patience of allowing me to kind of move things around a little bit and reword some things. And so, yeah, I obviously could still be a work in progress if anybody had other ideas, but I hadn't heard anything back. So I guess open to anything people have to say about it.
Well, and I appreciate you letting me move things around again. Yeah, he said in his report compromise, and that's what it was. So I think it's good.
Well, thank you, both of you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, you did a good job, I think, summarizing it straight to the point. I like it. Good job.
I agree. Thanks for your work on it and taking some feedback from last meeting and being willing to compromise on it maybe a bit. But yeah, no, I like it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Resolution 2131 is before you. We're ready for vote. Roll call vote.
Herbold.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
O'Sullivan.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Swales.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Are there any announcements?
Well, I apologize. Can I ask a quick
Yes.
question? It was brought up, so someone had brought up to me the question of whether we were enforcing, I guess it'd be the prohibition on parking cars in city right of way. And so I can't remember, I was just looking through that kind of the bullet points. Steve, I think you had a good response in terms of kind of what the status of things were. And it sounded like it was more of an enforcement or not issue. I'm just bringing this to council because a resident had voiced the concern to me. So does that make sense to ask it that way?
I can speak to the enforcement, Nick. at least what's been done in the past. The city has the right of way, whether there's a sidewalk or not. The sidewalk doesn't, the existence of the sidewalk doesn't negate the fact, or the non-existence of the sidewalk does not negate the fact that the city still has a right of way. Long before I ever arrived, the practice was that for those properties without sidewalks, if they parked cars, they were allowed to park them to the curb. For those properties with sidewalks, they were only allowed to park them to the sidewalk. That is, we've been consistent with that past practice. It is a bit, I don't know about arbitrary, but again, properties without sidewalks are potentially reaping an extra benefit that those with sidewalks cannot reap.
Any other discussion? Comments?
I think, Steve, you were basically just saying that there wouldn't be any, there's not really a law change at issue or ordinance change at issue. It would just be if the council is so inclined, they could say no parking on city right, or ask that there be enforcement of no parking on city right away. But it sounds like that has not happened as of now.
I can answer the first part easily. Yeah, there doesn't need to be any ordinance change at all. I mean, you can't park cars on city right of way. I mean, unless it's on the street and parking is permitted, but you can't rent spaces, anyone, on city right of way, period. How that's being enforced, I defer to Chief Kelsey. I can't really speak to that, but you're right. There does not need to be any change. And I agree with what Chief Kelsey said. If there's a sidewalk there, it's usually a pretty easy demarcation. You know, the property line is pretty well right along the house side of the sidewalk, so that the sidewalk itself and that little grassy area that some people call the parking or the boulevard or whatever between the sidewalk and the curb, that's all city right away, and you can't park cars there. You can't, rent spaces there. Whether you can play beanbag toss, my sense is that as long as you're not obstructing the sidewalk, probably that's allowed. But you do have to allow for safe passage of anybody that wants to walk on the sidewalk, whether they're going to the football game or going wherever.
I appreciate that. So I guess, again, this is something that came from residents. So I guess I would say, if there are specific issues, we'd want to hear about them. And if it's something where, I guess if people are walking where a sidewalk would be and they don't feel safe walking out onto the street at that location, I guess that's what maybe we'd want to hear about. Chief, is that kind of what how you'd evaluate that, or is it something where it's just not a thing because the streets without sidewalks are not very busy?
As far as a public safety view, I think you're always going to be safer walking out of the street than in the street. However, I think the risk is minimal, but that's my personal opinion for persons walking in the street on game day. There's so much traffic and there's so many people walking around that, it's not like they're walking down Highway 1. For us to enforce that, I think that it needs to be fair, and more than as much as fair, I think that it needs to be consistent. So if we were going to do enforcement for the public right of way on properties that don't have sidewalks, I think that it would need to be citywide, not complaint driven. And I think there would be a lot of education that would need to be done. And there is no clear demarcation. One side of the street has sidewalks in some places, one side doesn't. Personally, I think that it's not that the ship can't be turned around, but I think that it would take a lot of communication and a lot of, I think that it's unfair to suddenly show up and start ticketing people for parking in the public right of way when it's something that's been allowed for, I don't know how many years. That's not to say that it can't be addressed. That's not to say that the behavior can't be modified, but I think you start with education before you start with enforcement. And I think that it needs to be consistent and community-wide, not just a particular property or a string of properties.
I think that's a lot of good information. I appreciate that. I have nothing further.
So can I point out ordinance 231, please? Sorry. An ordinance prohibiting obstruction of public right-of-ways, including sidewalks. And I think this is something we had talked about, not in terms of changing everything about parking, but it was keep the, the right-of-way open, the sidewalks, the houses that have sidewalks and the right-of-way, keep that open. Now, I haven't looked at this in a while, so.
And the ordinance does not delineate, again, it does not speak about whether there's a sidewalk or not. It just talks about the public right of way. In practice, where there is a sidewalk, again, like Councilor Ballard pointed out, Attorney Ballard pointed out, the right of way, if they're playing bing or playing cornhole on that and they aren't interfering with people passing by, then typically we don't respond to it and address it. The ordinance itself does say that you're not to set up barbecue. You're not to interfere. You're not to do anything there that might obstruct. Well, it doesn't even say might. You're not to do anything there, and I'm assuming that it's so that it doesn't obstruct pedestrian traffic and it doesn't interfere with line of sight for pedestrians or vehicles. In practice, the grills we try to keep off of those public right-of-ways, but if somebody has cornhole set up there, as long as they're not obstructing the sidewalk, we've been allowing them to do that. There are a few properties that will want to set up tables on the sidewalk and use them, for example, as a Bloody Mary bar, and we stop and we chat with those people, and we don't tell them to shut their Bloody Mary bar down. We tell them it can't be on the sidewalk and to remove it. So we do our best to try to keep the sidewalks open, but in the absence of the sidewalk, our practice has been to use the curb as our line. But we do try to keep the right-of-ways open where there is a sidewalk.
What's that ordinance number?
131, I believe.
231.
231.
I'm sorry?
231.
231. Thank you, Lisa.
And that is the second bullet point on the game day information. And there was a lot of discussion about having crowds of people that you can't walk through, that sort of thing.
Right. And the way that it's written in the football game letter, let me look at that. I'll pull it up here, make sure I'm right. Yes, is it talks about the area between the street and the sidewalk. So again, that area still exists in the absence of a sidewalk. But as far as our expectations and our education, and as a last result, as our enforcement, it's really focused on those areas that do have sidewalks.
Right. Correct.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you, Nick. Is there any announcements?
I stayed at the new hotel on my birthday in July, and that's a fantastic building. That is just, I felt like I shouldn't even be in there. I felt like I was out of my league. It's very nice, and I encourage anybody, if you get a weekend getaway, go no further than right there. It's a beautiful, wonderful place. It's oh my gosh, just incredible. The beds, the rooms, the space. It's just very nice. And it doesn't smell like cigarettes yet.
Oh my.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Thanks, Doug. Any other announcements? That was an interesting one. Yeah, but that's a nice comment. I agree. Is there any objection to adjournment? Hearing none, the meeting's adjourned by unanimous consent. Thanks, everyone. Have a good wedding for your daughter, Doug.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Well,
Okay.